gradually get people back. People visiting in town and fun. So if you are one of these that are for the first time to our Audubon, one of our Audubon meetings, I'd like you to introduce yourself, stand up, tell us who you are, where you're from, and we'll welcome you. Is there anybody new here for the first time? Griffin is, and we're gonna meet him in a little bit. Yes.
David Mary Philbrook with Waverly.
Waverly, welcome, Phil. Anybody else? Yes.
Kenneth Oversmith, my wife, my daughter's dad's.
Fantastic, glad to have you. Boys at the university, biology, right? Yeah. Birds too. Insects and all the other cool stuff. Anybody else? Miss anybody? Okay. So, we have treats back there. You can all see we have some treats today are provided by, Margie Smith, Pat Lang, Bill Flaherty, Peggy Moore, Al Sant, Candace Habley, and Charlene Hyde. Thank you. Next month is our potluck, so we won't be bringing treats, but plan on bringing something for the dealers. Charlene, is there anything we need to say about the potluck the next month in May?
I think as we've done in the past, everybody bring their own table service. So, and then we will have some drinks here. And then just bring an item or two to share with everybody.
And cable service and item or two, and there'll be something in the newsletter or on the website too about that. We need a reminder. So
Is that at 6 o'clock, Tom?
I think so. I'm not sure. Okay, we'll say it's at 6. That sounds about the way it is. My memory serves me right. So, Francis, you hit the record back there. He's got it. Good deal. All right, Ken, about the silent auction, you notice we've got a lot of good stuff out here. Thousands of dollars worth for you to take home.
Tonight. Yeah, we got some specials here. We've got some bags of corn. We had priced at $3 a bag. We want to get rid of it before the summer, so we're going to reduce that to $1. That's ear corn. And on the far table with all the books, those are all new ones that just came in today. I haven't had time to mark them yet, so if you see something there you want, get a hold of me and we'll write up a tag on it for you. But there's a lot of good new stuff here, so look it over.
It'll be like 10 minutes after the program tonight, before they wrap up, and then you get the money to Ken, then, right?
Right.
All right. So you know what he looks like now. Already. So Francis tells me we have 9,734.69 in our account, which has just gone down by about $3,000 to $4,000 because we've written the checks for grants. And we have some other projects we're working on too. We'll be getting, I found out today, finally, our $725 annual amount from National Audubon. I think we have about 420 members in our Audubon chapter, and about 300 some are National Audubon. And we don't get much from them, but we could have 10,000 members, we get $725. We have, I don't know, maybe it's whatever. So any donations are welcome. We have a donation box over there. If you want to renew a membership or membership stuff, then you want to talk to Francis back there. And maybe on your check or whatever you write, just put membership so we don't get mixed up with a donation or something else for whatever. And keep us informed also about your emails. We're trying to get, we still have people that are not getting our newsletter. We're trying to figure out what should be coming on an email. And so if your email's changed or doesn't hurt to double check and see. So we get all the information to you that you need. And all that stuff is always available on our website and also on Facebook too. We're down $296.81 in our bird feed account. And we'll be stopping the bird feeding in the first part of May. And, we'll cover that, but, we're thinking, I'll move on here. Great, field trips. A quick note about field trips.
Thanks, Tom. We had a new minister come into our church here 15, 20 years ago. He came up to me and asked me if I could give a sermon. And I said, well, no, I could wing it. I could talk about the rational root theorem, but I don't know if I can do that, but I can make it last about 40 minutes. So I can wing it if I need to, let me know. And that's where I'm at here. I'm gonna wing this for a minute. I'd like to thank, oh,
Yeah, turn the mic on, I think.
well, outside.
Put it in your mouth.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. So what I just said was just kind of ad libbing, trying to get psyched up for this. Last Wednesday was our first birding outdoor activity for Wednesday morning birding. But you didn't attend it because I called Connie. Swoboda, good at Tama County meeting, Swoboda. And asked her if she'd delay it a week, because I didn't think last Wednesday was gonna turn out all right, and I was right. What a snowstorm and bad weather, so tomorrow will be our kickoff meeting for this year, starting tomorrow at Big Woods Lake at 8:30. So bring a friend, come out, bring any age person who can come to this. And there might be some water out there, I don't know, Big Woods, but we'll have a good time and renew some experiences we've had. Then the following week, I believe we're scheduled to go to down to the Sandpit Quarry area for Riverview area.
Riverview Recreation.
Yeah, Riverview Recreation area will be the following Wednesday, which means that if you are not receiving an email from us, you need to let myself or Chris or somebody in our group know that, so that we can send you a message about our birding adventures on Wednesdays. And if you'd like to participate in that, or if you got a friend that would enjoy knowing about attending these on Wednesday mornings, just let us know and we'll put you on a mailing list that would get that to you. And then
I don't think I got it.
I guess that's it, Tom.
Good.
I'm trying to think if I could say something. Oh, there is one more thing. Yes. Write this down. You got a pen? Next Thursday in Denver at the public library, my wife, Christine, is going to give a presentation on Orioles of the United States, but mainly of Iowa. That'll probably be, is that at 5 o'clock, Chris, do you think?
Sure, I'll be done.
Chris is gonna talk about Orioles next week at the Denver Library. That's another.
3:30.
Is it next week or week after?
It's next week, 18.
18. I just said next week. Oh, and Jim Welch, I'm glad to see you and Sharon are here tonight. Appreciate you Ohio people coming here after Hawkins went out there and lost, well, here.
Yeah.
Thanks for those short remarks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Oh, we're good at the time tomorrow morning.
It will.
Yeah.
Always have a good one. Did a great job of that. Thank you so much. We're preparing, we have Ann Slough from our board is on committee for sustainable backyards. And she's not here tonight, but if you know of a yard, something that you want to show off, or you're doing sustainable things in your yard, let us know and we'll get that information to her. And this is gonna be in June. And they may need some volunteers to help with some of these spots. If you're thinking of something that you can help with a yard thing or so, let us know. And we'll get you involved. Um. Well, I want to introduce. Griffin Kabalka, is that right? Close enough, all right. And, I got a thing to read, so I'm just gonna let you tell us who you are, what you're doing, and excited to have you here tonight.
Good evening and thanks for having me this evening. My name is Griffin Sabanka. I am with the Blackhawk County Secondary Roads Department as their integrated vegetation roadside management program. With that, it's kind of a handful. But basically, the gist of this program is to enhance our public right of ways within the county. So tonight I have a short presentation, I can make it. And any questions maybe after or a few here when I'm finished here. All right, so the IRBM program, as they call it, we are enhancing the habitat within the right of ways and also making it safe for roadway users. I believe I went too far. So for this program for Blackhawk County, it was actually one of the first programs to start this statewide. This was a kind of a big feat, and also the state was also a driver for this. Iowa is one of the few states that has a roadside vegetation management program that is for enhancing native, specifically for native grasslands like our tall grass birds. So for me, this is kind of a new program starting back up. This was 20 years ago, there was a program. Russ Pritchard was he was the start of this program. And after he had left and retired, this position sat vacant for 20 years. So we've had a lot of work to do. I've only been here since 2022, the end of summer. So with that said, I've just kind of given a few outlines of my goals that I would like to do. We have a bunch of brush within our right of way that can be, dangerous for our roadway users, for visual obstructions. And say if you were to go off the road and hit that, that's also a hazard that we have. So I have a goal of spraying about 1/4 of the county a year, displayed up there on the map. Cutting larger trees and brush. And then every year the county does ditch cleanouts that the ditches have been silted in from the ag fields or adjacent lands. So with that, every one of those I plant back into native prairie for our habitat for our birds, bugs, and other animals. So with that, I've gone to my 5-year goal. Most of our equipment is fairly old. So my main goal within 3 to 5 years, I'd like to get some equipment rounded up and to better our management tactics. And then 6 through 10, I've got a lot of native seedings that in the time frame will be utilized for the public's view and habitat as well for our native creatures. And with this, there are several things that I'm going to be doing for programs. One is I'm going to be implementing a adopt a roadside prairie program. This is where a landowner that has a ditch adjacent to their house or a piece of property. I will come in, I will spray down the non-desirable vegetation and we'll restart fresh with a new prairie. And I'll help and assist the landowner in managing that native prairie. We get our native prairie mixes they're very diverse. We have think around 15 native grasses and 70 native forests. And it's all local ecotype seed. So they're gathered from the local prairies around Iowa, surrounding Iowa, that the growers that provide the seed for us is what we utilize. So very close to us and is. So with just give a perspective, it is myself and another seasonal helper. Here in this county, we have roughly just shy of 5,000 acres of public right of way. So if you can imagine the county conservation board, they have roughly 7,000 acres and they have a whole fleet of people. I'm one guy and I have to manage just shy of 5,000. So I have a tall task, but I think I'm making a difference over my career. And then this just breaks down the hard surface to gravel road. So the miles is about 250 miles of hard surface roads, and that equates just over 2,100 acres, and about 515 miles of gravel roads, just shy of 2,500 acres. With this last year, in our spray program that we have endured, everything in the green is what we have applied herbicides to try and combat the overgrowth that we have in our right of ways. So this will help, for future drainage and visibility issues, anything like that. So last year we covered approximately 1,400 acres, both sides of each of the road. So the goal was to get about a quarter of the county done, and we were successful, and we had been able to spray just over a quarter of the county. All right, and this is just some examples of what we are running into within the county. The photo is on the left-hand side, the way you view it. That is just one roadside within the county in the northeast part or northwest part. We have extreme overgrowth and visibility issues there with that house. And through the middle, that top flower looks pretty beautiful, but it actually is a very big nuisance. That is purple loosestrife. And below it is Canada thistle. Below that is crown vetch. And these are just some of the common things that we have found that are becoming more and more of a problem within the county. And on the right-hand side is Japanese knotweed. If anybody knows what that is a very persistent aquatic, it's semi-aquatic. It likes to grow along waterways, creeks, streams, rivers, and it doesn't take long for it to really take over there. So just some of the things that we have managed this past year. I know that was a lot of, seems like we're getting rid of things, but the good part is just here. Some of our prairie projects that we've done, within our ditch cleanouts, this top left picture is a very, very small native prairie seed. It's called sneezeweed. It's almost like dust. You would never imagine something like that to grow within the first year, but that picture is just a representation of just how 1 year you can have something like a pollinator like that grow for our native pollinators and birds as well. Rattlesnake master is below that, and that's found all along and all throughout the county, within Blackhawk County and New England asters as well. There's several other sky blue, all those other asters within the county right away. This sign here is actually my first educational roadside prairie. This is located on C-57. It's that new bridge over the Cedar River. This is a really nice planting that has been established a few years ago before I. And, it's just a good representation of what's to come in the future. So far since I've been here, I have planted 25 acres of diverse native prairie within the county. Like I said, there are the two sites of the educational roadside prairies. In totals 8 so far. A lot of these larger plantings are bridge projects, new bridge projects that take up a lot of right-of-way area. And the other one that was just planted this last fall into winter is Pointer Road Bridge, just east of Gilbertville. And then on the bottom, I have the Adopt a Roadside Prairie program. Currently, I have 4 sites that is in a pilot program, so we look forward to releasing that as soon as we can for any landowner that would want to enjoy that. In my few short years that I've been here, these are just some of the native prairies and pollinator plants that I have come across. They're really neat to see and to share with everybody. We have a cardinal flower, partridge pea, really kind of one that you would hardly ever see in a diverse prairie is prairie pecan. And that is a very, very interesting plant. Lead plants. We have spiderwort and white wild indigo as well. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I also am here tonight as well, seeking out people for my advisory board for this program. This advisory board is a very minimal attendance. We would only have 2 meetings for the whole year, once maybe in midsummer and once in the winter. That would entail going over budgeting items, programs that we're utilizing, and any other interesting things that maybe you could bring towards the program and bounce around ideas, because I'm only 26, so I don't know a whole lot yet. So I take all the knowledge and information that you guys know and others know as well. So yeah, but without any other questions or anything, I appreciate it and thank you for your time.
Prominent, he said. Prominent.
I'll piggyback on what Griffin had to say. It's a really good statewide program. And I'm just thinking about my own yard. I don't have a roadside as such, but I can put a little bit of prairie in. A little bit along the garage. And it's amazing what shows up. Going through the insects I found out today, I have a American bumblebee in my yard, which is endangered. It might be listed as a state. I had a groundhog the other day in my yard. I where that came from. It's not because of the prairie, it was around the other surprise. But then getting our spring birds with me. So I had butterflies flying around today in the yard. I hermit thrush hopping through some of the prairie stuff and that. So we're starting to see some of our spring birds arriving. Somebody, I saw it this morning, said they had a yellow rump warbler yesterday up here. And so some neat things. So what have you been seeing right now? Yes.
Actually, downtown there, where the city of Waterloo's, cell tower is right there.
Yeah.
There's a nesting pair of osprey
Yep.
up there.
Riverview Park has a
Yeah.
pair of osprey are back over there again. The pelicans going over. Yes. Pelicans too. People looking for them along the river.
Alice Witt had hundreds of them.
Did they?
Yeah, on Sunday, I estimated 360. That was.
Hear that, Larry?
Where was that at?
Alice with Lake. George Wood,
Really?
yeah, you never know.
There's hardly any water left in the lake, but they were out on the islands and have been appearing with all of the water.
Yes,
We have a little talk of how we can fly over our school.
school,
Yeah.
is that in Cedar Falls, Hanson, Lincoln?
They let you out of school to go see them?
Yeah, that's cool. I'm here to report people are getting purple finches at their feeders right now. They still have some, pine systems out there. The ranches had, a red pole at their feeder last week. Candace?
I just wanted to share that after 14 years of chasing a live bird on Easter Sunday, serendipitously, I found a common crane in Llewellyn, Nebraska. And I'm so happy. Because this was the 5th time was the charm. And it hadn't been reported on eBird, and we just happened to be driving through. And I said to Mark, you know what would be cool is if a common crane would be here near the road where I could see it. And he stops and I started glassing through and there it was. So after 14 years and, you know, I've been birding for about 20 years now. Sometimes you don't always get those live birds, but it's still as exciting as ever.
That's a big one. It's not like from Siberia or something.
It's Eurasian.
Eurasian, yeah.
Yeah, so, and it was hanging with the sandhills, and it's probably the one that we looked for last spring in that very same place, so. But, yeah, I bought a lottery ticket that night, didn't win the lottery. But I won the birding lottery, so I thought I would share that with you because I knew that there would be people.
Right. Any other sightings you'd share, Tom?
And 15, I counted 15 red admirals.
15 red admirals. Good seeing a lot of those. Spring beauty are in bloom right now too. Look at the nectarine on those. Yes, Al.
Ruby Crown singing it back there.
Ruby crown kinglet. Gold crown kinglet's been on. Ruby crown the best. Yep. Well, I'm ready for spring. I'm sure you are too. Or the warm weather. Hope it just stays kind of nice. And come on one of our field trips. Craig does a fantastic job. I give him a hard time all the time, but Craig and Chris are leading these things. Taking us around these areas, so appreciate that. Yes. Craig.
They talked a lot about it on the news with the eclipse, the reaction of the animals. Anybody have any? I saw 5 or 6 pheasants today, which that's the first I've seen. They were just.
I went out to Cedar Hill Sand Prairie specifically to see if it would be a difference if the woodcock would start to peak. But it really didn't get very dark and nothing really changed. The birds are still flying and the sound was still there from what I had experienced before with an eclipse. But got a little bit cooler, but not much. There was a sandhill crane sitting on a nest out there, so that was kind of interesting. Yeah. Thank you, yeah. No, there's no change. But they are out there, if you want to see the woodcock, go out there at dusk. Right about, right when the sun starts to go down. Walk into the prairie, look back towards the west. And these things will start peaking and you can hear 15, 20 sometimes. And then they start doing that sky dance. And they burn the prairie out there now, so it's a lot easier to walk, but they're still there. So it's a fun thing to see. All right, well, we're ready for our program. Is there anything else for the go to the group tonight? All right. Well, I'm so excited to have Mark Rouw with us. I think it was in the Iowa DNR magazine, maybe, or I saw an article. Is that the one?
Well, there's several articles lately, so I'm not sure which one.
Oh, anyway. Well, we gotta get a hold of this guy. I think it's from being with that speaker, that one, in front of that. We'll change that here in a bit. So Mark is a member of the Des Moines Audubon, and he's a volunteer with the Iowa Big Tree Program. He has a degree from Drake University, painting and drawing, all right, correct me if I get wrong on that. And he's an award winning trees, I would say a big tree hunter, I guess is the way to put it.
It's kind of hard to categorize, you know, there's a lot like me.
Right, like, it's like finding the rare birds, you know, that he finds like the rare trees and the really big ones. And I'm really interested, I think you are too, with, oh, yeah, this big tree, I'll find out, you know, more about it. He's measured over 1,000 trees here just in Iowa and found some really huge ones too around in the Midwest, but mostly here. And some really record-breaking ones too, and so without further ado, I'll let you maybe fill in some of the gaps I left out and let you get started here. I'm gonna shut my mic off and.
Well, thank you, Tom. It just occurred to me a little while ago that, and I wonder if any of you heard the same thing, but they did a survey. And I don't know who did the survey, but the conclusion was that birding was the most boring activity. You know, what could be more thrilling than finding a new species for your life list? You know, it's so exciting. So obviously no birders were involved in the Well, it's great to be here. I'm glad you showed up and you have some interest in big trees. When I started doing this, I was all on my own. I wasn't aware that anybody else did such a thing. And then about 1973, I was in the Des Moines Library and I saw an American Forests magazine that had the National Register of Big Trees. And yeah, I was just fascinated by it. And so I scoured that over and you know, kept looking for big trees around my own neighborhood, and wherever my family went or my dad went, I'd ride along, and so I could see more trees. So my options were pretty limited initially, but then in 1978, the Iowa Big Tree Program started. And it was fashioned after the national program that started in 1940. Well, back in those days, I was just a youngster and I didn't have any credentials. I wasn't known, essentially didn't get any respect. So what was going on was I would nominate a tree and I would measure it precisely, at least as precise as I could. Then a district forester would go out and measure it incorrectly. And some of the foresters weren't real happy with me because I challenged them. And it's kind of interesting. Today, I talk to any of the district foresters and they're aware of me and I'm the expert. So it's kind of neat to go full circle. And it's taken a long time to get this respect, but it's welcome. It's kind of a nice place to be. All right. So this is how the national program started in 1940. It was a forester who recognized that we were losing too many of our big trees. And so he was kind of a visionary. Unfortunately, the big tree program really doesn't offer much protection for big trees, but at least if people know that a tree is significant, it's more likely to be protected. So it does have benefits. So this is what went into the American Forest magazine. Let every tree lover, every forester, every lumberman rally to fight for the preservation of our biggest tree specimens. So pretty cool. Okay, so you got to have a method for figuring out which tree is the biggest. And I'm not saying this is perfect. I think there's some flaws because it's really weighs heavy on the circumference. So as you can see, every inch equals a point. And every foot of height equals a point. But the crown spread doesn't count for much at all. So it really favors trees with the big trunks, so height and spread are not nearly as significant when it comes to totaling up for a champion tree. Okay, there's different methods for measuring. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I've got too many beautiful trees to look at and talk about. So you can go online and you can find out methods for measuring. The sign plus sign method is gonna be the best. Right there. And it's the best, it's the closest thing you can get next to a tape drop. Actually finding a tree and dropping a tape down, it's that good. Okay, this points out where the problem lies when most trees in the past were measured with the tangent method and actually still are today. People often assume that the highest point is directly above the trunk. That's actually rarely the case unless you're looking at a Norway spruce or a blue spruce or something like that. So a lot of the foresters are actually trying to measure the height of only 66 feet away. And that is way too close. You have to get back much further on most trees to actually see which twig is the highest. Because when you don't, you're looking at limbs coming out towards you. And so what happens is, so the guy standing there further out with the red line, or with the, he's closer. He came from here. The blue line, he measured out 100 feet. And now he's thinking this is the highest point. Look how that throws the angle off. So this is what I was running into. I checked a silver maple that I measured at 66 feet high. The district forester had it 125 feet high. And this is important because the big tree lists at the state level and national level, those are thought to be accurate, and those are referenced in field guides and other reference materials. And if you don't have accurate measurements, all that is worthless. So for integrity, it's important to get accurate measurements. So what you have to do is you have to figure out where the highest point is and get directly underneath, then measure out whatever distance it is, and then make sure you're actually seeing the highest point and not getting fooled by something like this or this. And I'll tell you right now, for most trees, nearly impossible to measure when they're leafed out. So I do most of my measuring when the trees are bare, and it's much easier. Okay, so the sign plus sign method is the one that's considered to be the best method for measuring trees. And you don't have to have a fancy rangefinder that does the calculations for you. However, for me, I think the number of trees that I measure is well worth it, even though they're expensive. And there are some that are quite accurate, but even with a clinometer and just a kind of a run-of-the-mill rangefinder, you can get a pretty good idea of the height of the tree. So when you can research this. I just don't want to spend too much time on this. So here's some instruments that are good, and I am a big fan of this one here. I have this instrument and I guard it with my life. So these others are good too, but of course, it's going to run you about $2,000 to get one. But when you measure hundreds of trees like I do, it saves so much time. It's well worth it. Now this map is already out of date, and I just updated it recently. But it kind of shows you that there's more big trees in eastern Iowa, and fewer in the west. Polk County is there, but that's where I live, so I've looked at every tree. But not too much going on in northwest Iowa. So southeast Iowa is kind of a hot spot, and then eastern and northeastern Iowa. All right. I was told about a huge tree. This is northwest Iowa, Lyon County. And it was supposed to be huge. And I was thinking, well, I'll be the judge of that, because silver maples are kind of notorious, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. Here it looks like a nice big tree. Let's look at the other side. So it's actually two merged trunks. See that seam coming up there? It's got included bark in there. It's not a single trunk. And a lot of people, they'll tell me about a big tree and I'll say, is it a single trunk? And they say, oh, yes, it's a single trunk. And then I go look at it and it isn't. All it is trunks that are together. So I need to be more clear on that, but people, if you're not used to looking for that, you're not going to recognize it right away, but you can also tell, somewhat by the angle the limbs are coming in, they should be coming out and up, to show you that it's not, multiple stems. And speaking of multiple stems, now this is interesting for several reasons. This was in West Des Moines. There's that huge, it's not called a mall, whatever, it's this West Des Moines, anyway. Jordan Creek, yeah, so town center, yeah. But, so these are the measurements I came up with. So it's impressive. However, it's at least 2 trunks and probably 3. Now, it's interesting to note that in the instructions for circumference, you're supposed to measure at 4 1/2 feet above the ground. And if there is a branch or growth at that point, you measure below that where the circumference is least. Well, look what's going on here at 4 1/2 feet. The forester that measured this just put the tape around 4 1/2 feet, and he had something like 32 feet circumference. And that was actually nominated, and I think it may have been listed in the National Register. And it's just all wrong. Oops. Oh, can't go back.
Yeah, use the wheel.
What?
No, it'll,
Oh, wow. You got a flash of a big silver maple. It's the champion that's in Des Moines. This mulberry, it's the neatest thing about this tree. Now, white mulberries, I have mixed feelings about them because they are polluting red mulberry, native mulberry. And so, oh, there we go. Now back to this one. So this one, it's a little bit questionable, but it looks like, there's not really a seam coming down between these, and I think it's a single trunk. So this is our current state champion. But it does have a bigger trunk because it forked relatively low. So that does seem to add a lot to the girth. And there's also a lot of soil buildup around the base, so it's probably could take a foot soil out from around there. Okay, mulberries. So our native mulberry is a red mulberry. This is the introduced white mulberry, which has been prolific. So it's right up there with Siberian elms for being a weed species. And so I was mentioning they're polluting the red mulberry, or native mulberry, so it's very hard to find pure red mulberries. Most of them are hybrids. And this is a problem. However, this was a special tree because I measured this way back, probably 1973, and it was only a little over 8 feet in circumference. And then it was clear up to nearly 16 feet around. But I got a call, I think it's been a couple of years ago now, and or maybe it was an email, but anyway, it was somebody that an acquaintance of mine, and they said they wondered if this was a significant tree that had already been cut. The idea is you contact me before the tree is cut, but yeah, it was the state champion. So I kind of missed that tree just because I got such a long-term connection with it. But I found another big one in Davenport, and this one is a dandy. However, just to the back of me here is an alley. So this limb here gets the heck pruned out of it, because of power lines there. But really amazing. When you look at that maximum spread, I've never seen anything like that for a mulberry. Over 90 feet. Really incredible. And this one goes way back. First measured it in 1979, and it was a good sized tree then, big enough that it stood out. Merited measurement. And in 1989, Just 10 years later, you can see how much it grew. Don't have height and spread measurements for 1979. That's me when I was younger. That's what the tree looks like today. That's a friend of mine standing there. That's some significant growth. Look at that trunk circumference. That's a lot. But notice how the height hasn't changed. That's not unusual. Oftentimes, the heights on trees kind of top out. There are limiting factors that keep them from getting higher. So we usually find our tallest trees like down in a ravine or something where they have more protection. But the ones that are exposed to the winds and storms, oftentimes just kind of reach a point and they say, well, this is all the higher I'm going. Or else there's something that beats them back, you know. Magnificent tree. This one's no slouch either. So this is one of the biggest remaining American elms. And this is a tree I've been monitoring a long time, and you can see that circumference there has increased a lot. And it's interesting that there's another tree just maybe 200 yards from this one that's almost identical in size. So there's two American elms, and so far they have not got that elm disease, which is incredible. Pretty amazing basal flare and roots there. There probably was some erosion involved as well, but still pretty cool. And this one's in the Des Moines area. It escaped my view for a long time. This is our state champion in Sigourney. Maximum spread of 133 feet. That's not too shabby. I am worried though, because last summer the tree did not look good, so I'm anxious to find out if it's budding out, because it may have got Dutch elm disease. It'd be very sad. Look at that one. That one gone. They got Dutch elm disease and died.
How old is it when they get like this?
Well over 100. I mean, they're a relatively fast growing tree, but I would expect that one there to be 150 minimum. Yeah, that was an amazing American elm. This is one of the trees of one of many of the big trees that suffered damage from the 2020 derecho. It's still standing. It's on a, some of you have probably seen this tree. It's up high. It's close to the president's residence, Cornell College. Are you familiar with balsam firs? They're actually native in Iowa. They're not common, and they don't get very big normally. So I don't think there's going to be any that are naturally occurring that are this size. This cemetery at Lansing is pretty special. There's a big bluff kind of to the south and west, and it gives the trees protection. And that's a remarkable tree. However, it does have multiple leaders, and so that is going to be prone to splitting. So if you've got especially conifers that tend to have a leader that's, you know, very tight without any space between the leaders, it's important when they're young to maintain just a single leader. It will prevent that from splitting in the future. Yeah, and this is a co-champion European larch. There's another big one in Decorah. A little bit different shaped tree, but the same species and very comfortable on overall points. It has been struck by lightning. It's got a big strip of bark missing, but it should live for decades. Now, this one here is pretty interesting because this is a tree that I found a long time ago in Winneshiek County. And we have a fair number of white spruce around. They're not abundant, but you see them in cemeteries and some people's yards and other places. And this was by far the biggest one that I'd ever seen. This much, much bigger than anything else. And I monitored it for years. That's what it looked like in 2015. Things have changed around there. There were a number of big white spruce lining two sides of this cemetery, but by this time, almost all of them had been removed. I can't imagine they all died when this one was still alive. I think they decided, well, let's keep the big one, you know, but unfortunately now it's gone too. And I had visions of this someday becoming a national champion tree. It was that big. And it's very disappointing to me when I've been monitoring a tree for 2 or 3 decades and then find that they're gone. It's sad. And this one here was a national champion. Now in Iowa, national champion trees are few and far between because the species that we have growing here can get bigger and further east and further south. And so for a lot of our trees, we're kind of at the edge of their range or close to it. And they're just not capable of reaching national championship size. But this one did. And it was a very exciting find. However, I find this tree and then everything is all about emerald ash borers are coming. And I'm thinking, oh boy, you know, well, I know people in the Iowa Arborist Association and I was able to make arrangements to get this tree treated. So we went there to treat this tree, protect it from the emerald ash borer, and it had snapped off in a storm. Now, not all champion trees are big. This is a Allegheny serviceberry. And it's interesting because you can see there was a trunk here. That one hung over the road, so that was cut off and it's of course decaying. And then this one was comparable, but it was upright, so it was always the bigger one. But now this is gone, but this sucker coming off of the base here is still there, and it is now the champion Allegheny serviceberry. There's probably a bigger one somewhere, but tell me where. It's hard to find. Although this would be the time of year because they're flowering or close to flowering. That is the biggest girth on Norway spruce in Iowa I've ever encountered. Just think of that, over 17 feet around. That's Winneshiek County. But as big as that is, I don't think it's the biggest if we were to calculate the volume. This one here, I think, would win. And this is in Aspen Grove Cemetery in Burlington, which is a wonderful place, and it's now officially an arboretum too. But I'm trying to make arrangements to get a lightning protection system installed in this tree, protected from the lightning strike, because at 108 feet tall, I think it's just a matter of time before it gets zapped. It's just an amazing tree. The interesting thing is, I didn't find this until a couple of years ago, and I've been going down to Burlington since the mid-80s, and I've been through Aspen Grove Cemetery many times, but just looking from a distance, it doesn't look that big. Some trees are like that, you know, you have to wait, you have to get up close to them before you realize just how big they are. And this is one of those trees. Now this was our first state champion white pine, and it has since been surpassed. But look at that trunk circumference on it now; it's over 16 feet around. I never thought I'd see a white pine in Iowa with a trunk that big. It's not in good shape. It's got a big. It had 2 big limbs, lateral limbs coming out that were maybe 10 feet up, right next to each other, and I think a storm damaged one of them, and then that limb probably took the other one off, and so then they cut them off next to the trunk, and then that whole area below those cuts, no bark and lots of decay. So if you're close to it on a windy day, it makes sounds that the tree should not be making. A lot of creaking, doesn't feel safe to be around it. Okay, back in 1986, I was gonna go on a tree trip, and I wasn't doing a lot yet by then. But I headed out, and I don't pay attention to the deer hunting season, but it turns out the next day was the opening day of shotgun deer season, and I was gonna get a motel. And there weren't any rooms available anywhere. I ended up sleeping in my car in Bellevue overnight. I had a Volkswagen Dasher back in those days, and it was not a reliable car, but anyway, that's all I had, so that's what I took. But it had the hatch, so if I laid catty corner, there was just enough room for me to lay down in.
You're lucky. We stayed there one night in the motel. I'm
Well,
sure your car was nicer.
well, it wasn't very warm. It snowed 6 inches of wet, heavy snow, so on that morning, I'm waking up and my head is towards the rear bumper, you know, of the car, so I can push the hatch up, and then it's dark and it's heavy, and I'm pushing it up, and there's a guy walking his dog right next to me, and he looks over and says, "Lordy." So I gave him quite a start. But I don't take the cold very well, so that was a long night. But the next day I just went and explored, and I ended up at Claremont, and in the Catholic cemetery. This was the biggest of a number of big white pines, and I was in heaven. I was just so happy because this is just a inspirational time, you know. I was just inspired by these trees, and even though it was cold and my fingers were freezing, I had the time of my life measuring these trees. And this tree here, I'll show you the next slide. You can see how much it grew. It's remarkable. Now, after, I think it was probably in 2012, for some reason, the tree was cut down. Now, I've had a lot of trees that I really liked. I would even say I love them. I love trees. I'm not afraid to say that. But this may have been the one that I loved the most. And I've been monitoring it, you know, all these years. And then to find it being cut, along with the other pines on that far side of the cemetery. And I looked around, and there wasn't any signs of like a storm that would have necessitated them being cut. And so I sent a letter to the Catholic cemetery or church that's in charge of the cemetery, and asked them what happened to the white pine. If there was anything left of it, I'd be interested in getting a cross section, and told them that it was the state champion, and I've been monitoring it since 1986. I got no reply. But I think they probably sold them. I don't think they made very much from it. But just a shame. And this is the kind of thing that, this was a case of where it never occurred to me that this tree was in any potential trouble. You know, you'd think it'd be safe at the far end of the cemetery. I have a special affection for white pines. I think they're really cool, and White Pine Hollow is one of my favorite places anywhere. I'd have to say Burlington, Iowa is another place because it's got so many big trees, but Burlington and White Pine Hollow are my two favorite places in Iowa. It's because of the trees. And this is an amazing one. I was with Forester Bruce Blair when we came across this one, and can you see me down here? Yeah, that's, it doesn't look like Iowa. You'd think you were in Michigan or Wisconsin, and actually you don't see them there either because they were all cut. But look at those big trunks. Just amazing. And this one is now over 150 feet tall. When I started doing this, I assumed the cottonwood would be the tallest tree in Iowa. And I never envisioned a tree being 150 feet tall in our state. It's still growing. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some that were taller at the time of settlement, but you know, they were a valuable tree for lumber and, you know, straight trunks and, I suspect that White Pine Hollow was long. All of the trees there are approximately, almost all of them are approximately 150 years old. That coincides with when those trees would have been originally cut. But, really amazing. They do slow down as they get older, and as they get taller, they're going to be subject to more damage from storms and things. But that's an amazing tree. And there's a couple of my tree hunting partners. We went to White Pine Hollow together several times. This is a former co-worker, Steve Cooper, who also worked at the Science Center where I work. I'm recently retired. But and then that's me, of course. And this is Richard Miles, a very close friend, but he was having problems and he took his own life. So that's very sad. That's been 9 years ago and it still hurts. Isn't that cool?
That's cool.
Yeah, I love taking pictures of trees looking up the trunk. Okay, now, not a very good photo. However, this is the tallest tree in Iowa. So that's it, clear up there. And this is a planted tree. It's in Fayette County. And that's Bob Burt's. I was kind of hoping maybe he'd come tonight, but I think he's coming to Waterloo tomorrow, so he probably didn't want to come 2 days in a row. He lives in Cedar Rapids. Not much spread on it, but it's tall. And the girth isn't all that big, but boy, it's tall tree. Okay, so after that big white pine in Claremont in the cemetery was cut, I was very upset by that. That was very discouraging, very depressing. And I thought, well, we're never going to see another white pine, anything like that again. And then lo and behold, in Sioux City, of all places, in extreme western Iowa, I found this white pine. And I have measured over 100 white pines in Iowa, 100 of the biggest ones. All have been east of I-35. And most of them are in the eastern, like 3 tiers of counties close to the Mississippi River. So what is this guy doing out here? The champion in South Dakota is directly north of this because of the way the rivers go and the boundaries. So about 40 or 50 miles due north of this one, this tree, the volume is about 4 times greater than their state champion. So this is a real outlier here, but amazing, amazing tree. I worry about it, you know, I was worried about it when we're having such a drought conditions, because Sioux City, that area was very dry for a long time. Quite a bit of basal flare on the trunk there, so. Hemlocks, some of you are probably familiar with those. There are a few in Iowa, and this is the biggest one. It actually looks a little shorter than it is just because I have to use a wide angle to get it in. So that is a big hemlock for Iowa. Very impressive. That's the proud owner. This farm has been in his family for generations. And I think it was his great grandfather had a nursery. And so that's why a unique tree at that place. Tulip trees grow in Iowa. I don't know if you have any around here, but the way the weather's going, they'll probably grow here now. This is the state champion. And, there's actually two trees here, but it was confusing with the other trunk so close, so I lined them up so you can't see the other tree. It's behind this one, so it makes this look fuller. But, that's an impressive specimen. There are some big ones in Burlington and Davenport in particular. This is a very interesting tree. I was contacted by a person in Lee County who said they had a big chinkman oak. So I went down there to check it out. And the chinkman oak was okay, but not all that big, but I was seeing this tree off in the distance. I'm thinking, what is that? You know, it's big. And I went to look at it and it actually took me a while to figure out what it was. I knew it was an ash. It was either a black ash or a blue ash. If it had been a black ash, it would have been a national champion, but it was a blue ash. And they're a fascinating species, but wouldn't you know it? Emerald ash borer is knocking at the door. Now, the couple that own this property, the husband, who was the only one that I really dealt with, he was interested in treating the tree, but his wife would have nothing to do with it, so that tree is now dead. I should have done more, but I was kind of preoccupied because I had kind of a crisis in my own life and couldn't devote any time to getting done. I was kind of hoping that it would still be in good shape a couple of years ago because the blue ash is supposed to be the least favorite for the emerald ash borer, but we decided to use it anyway. Now, pay particular attention to the bark on this, and that's kind of typical for a red oak, you know, those big kind of narrow plates. And this is a big one down West Liberty. But look at this. This is a red oak too. Look at that bark. So when I first found it, I saw that bark and I thought, black oak. It doesn't look like a red oak. And this is in Dankford Park, and that's where the Parks Department is. And I went over there and I was talking to a young man, you know, and so he starts questioning me and he said, oh, I think it's a red oak. And then he said, are you a forester? And I was getting a little bit, this was uncalled for, but I was feeling a little bit threatened, a little bit insulted because he's thinking, well, this guy, you know, he's not a forester, he's not going to know what this tree is. And I said, I replied, no, I'm not a forester, but I can tell the difference between a red oak and a black oak. And then it turned out to be a red oak. So I owe that guy an apology. Sometimes when you're young, you do dumb things and you look back at it, but I think everybody's had similar experiences. I hope. I hope I'm not alone. Anyway, another national champion, and we still have this one. But it's interesting, we've had national champion European alder, white poplar, and Scotch pine. And those are all introduced species. They're considered naturalized, so they're eligible for the National Register. But I've given some thought to that, and I think when it comes to those exotics, it seems like more of an even playing field, I think. It's like we have as good a chance as other people, you know, or other areas of the country. At least that must be what's going on, because we've had several of them. This tree is knocking at 100 feet tall. And that's my friend Scott Carlson. He's an arborist from the Davenport area. So we do some looking around together over in that part of the state. National champion, so that's pretty special. Now, if you look closely, you can see somebody standing over there. That's a former forester, Wayne Huelbergy. And so another forester contacted me about this tree. So the first thing I say is it a single trunk? He assures me it's a single trunk. See the angle this is coming down? It's two trees together. But when measured around the trunk, it's, you know, about 35 feet around. I have approximate because I kind of lost interest in it when it wasn't a single trunk, so I didn't take pains to get the exact measurements. But unfortunately, a lot of the national champions are actually multi-trunk trees, so. Part of me wishes I'd have gone ahead and nominated it, because at that time it would have qualified, but I guess I couldn't do it. And that's one of the most impressive cottonwoods I've ever seen. I wish I could have seen it before it got beat up. Take a look at that. And that's in Monona County. At one time, that floodplain there must have had some just magnificent cottonwoods, but they've all been cut because we can farm it. We don't want any trees. It's a good sized one. Now, I just visited this tree, I guess it would have been last, June. And, this big limb has dropped off. And when it fell, it took some of the trunk, split some of the trunk off too. So the circumference is actually less now than it used to be, which never happens. You know, the trunk is supposed to get bigger every year. So I haven't reduced the trunk circumference. I just left it where it was, because this is kind of like, it didn't actually get smaller. It just lost part of it. And this is a kind of a significant tree. It's our new state champion cottonwood. So I was going to go up and see this tree. A man from, I'm trying to think of the town, Osage, from Osage, Iowa, told me about it. And anyway, I'm leaving Des Moines on a tree trip. And as always, I'm much later than I hoped to be getting going. And then I stopped in Hampton on the way up there. And the Hampton Cemetery, which I thought I had looked at a number of years ago, but obviously I hadn't, because I found so many cool trees there, I couldn't pull myself away from it. So by the time I got done measuring those trees, it was going to be hard to get up here before it got dark. But I made a beeline. I thought, I'm going to get up there and measure this tree. And probably a good hour away from the tree, I could see storm clouds and lightning that looked like, they're coming right through the tree. And I'm driving a little faster, and I want to get there. And this is clear up by the Minnesota border. It's a long ways. Well, it took me a lot longer to get from Hampton up to there than I thought it would be. That's why these photos are a little bit dark. It was starting to get dark. And I actually didn't finish measuring the spread, and the storm was so close that the lightning was a little bit too scary. So I went ahead and left. But I went back and got the spread. Now it looks kind of odd, because from here, the spread doesn't look that great, but I've got an average here. I took the greatest spread. You find the greatest spread, and then you're perpendicular to that, and you average it, and that's your spread. So that's what we just like. Yeah, yeah. Pecans. Did you know we have pecans in Iowa? There are some native ones, but this is one that's been planted. That's the biggest one. And boy, that's a big pecan for Iowa. How's that for a pear tree? Now, this pear tree, you can see right here, it had another big portion of the crown that broke off back in, I think, in the 70s. So it would have been much bigger. But this tree is very interesting because it was supposed to have been planted by the original homesteader. And that goes back a ways. This is the guy who lives adjacent to the tree now. It's kind of borderline as to whether it's county property or private property, but I think it's county property actually. So the biggest pear tree in Iowa and the oldest pear tree grows in the road ditch, and it hasn't been cut. So hopefully it won't. This is a marker that's at this house. So it says the claim stakes on this farm were driven September 14, 1833. cabin built in St. Paul by James E. Fox and wife Elizabeth Welton Fox. And so it's believed that that pear tree is that old. Isn't that amazing? Okay, this is our state champion sycamore. It's very impressive tree. It's hard to get the whole thing in there, so this is kind of a wide angle, so it's actually more impressive than that. But, some of you may have heard about this tree. It was in the news recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody set it on fire. It's got a big hollow on the other side. At one time, I think there was another trunk that was fused to it, but that other trunk, something happened and it broke off or something, and so it left a place where there it's decayed, and now it's very hollow. You can walk right in, you could lay down on the bottom of the tree. But I have not checked on the condition of it, so that'll be something I'll probably do yet here pretty soon. What an amazing tree. I can't even think of any cottonwoods. When you're looking up 50 feet in the air, they're still 4 feet in diameter. Now, this is an interesting tree. I'm probably going to run long, so if I am, you just tell me to speed it up. But there's interesting stories with all these trees. So anyway, I'm in southeast Iowa, and it took me actually years to get permission to measure a big sycamore that I thought might be a really tall one. So as well as finding the biggest ones, I'm looking for the tallest species or trees of the species as well. Well, the tree that I thought was going to be really, really tall didn't turn out to be as tall as I thought. It was only about 110 feet tall, so kind of a disappointment. You know, sometimes you will build stuff up in your mind over time, and you're thinking, and you're anticipating what it's going to be like, you know, and I was being too optimistic. So anyway, the next day, I'm in Burlington, and I'm in Dankford Park. I've been in Dankford Park many times, but I've usually been in the manicured park. This is kind of off in the woods to the north, and I see this tree, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the sycamore I've been looking for. That is the tallest sycamore that we know of in Iowa. There's probably some that are taller, but I don't know where they are. Swamp white oak. You guys probably have those. Those are probably native to this area. So we lost a big one, but this is our second place one, and it's no slouch. And it's down in Burlington, Dankford Park. Very cool tree. Okay, this is one of the biggest white oaks in Iowa, and it's not far from the Mississippi River. I spotted it from the River Road, Lee County, and got permission to measure it. And so I always want to document the trees with photographs as well as measurements. Only in this little pasture here, there was this young cow, and it was friendly enough. However, it was also very curious. Now, to take pictures of myself, I've got to set my tripod up and set my camera and then go running off. Now, each time I would do that, the cow would start heading for my tripod. I was afraid it was going to knock my camera, the tripod over with my camera on. So I'd go running back, and I had quite a time. Now, this is a more recent photo here, and it did suffer a little bit of damage from the recent last year's derecho damage. Yeah, so that's just for fun there. I didn't get there in time. There's the curious cow. Got some of you that were dozing off to pay attention. Unfortunately, this is gone too. I hate to say that because so many of our biggest kind of one-of-a-kind champion trees are now gone. This tree, I don't think it really needed to come down, but I think it was a case of where the owner was just a little too nervous with the tree that big, that close to the house in a small lot. nearly 20-foot circumference for pin oak in Iowa. That's amazing. Sassafras, natural range actually comes close to southeast Iowa, but doesn't quite get into Iowa. But in Montrose, there's this big one here. And so they had a derecho down there in southern Iowa. This tree got damaged a lot, so I really don't look forward to going and updating measurements on trees that have been damaged. I'd rather update them and have them be bigger than they were before. How's that for a butternut? Now, I don't know if it was a hybrid. I suspect it probably was, but it was a remarkable tree anyway. Look at that maximum spread of 116 feet on butternut. But this came down in the derecho, the 2020 derecho. Walnut's not too shabby. There's this little area adjacent to Crapo Park. It's actually part of Crapo Park, but it's not manicured. It's a woods. It's an old growth forest. I mean, it's only a few acres, but trees in there are remarkable. None of them are match this one for girth, but there's some tall trees there. There's the tallest hackberry and the tallest Kentucky coffee tree in that little woodland there. Some of you probably recognize this. The University of Iowa. This tree does have a lightning protection system. Now you can see there's a line right there. That's actually much wider than it appears from this angle. It's more like this, but there's a strip of bark missing. And that was from a lightning strike, previous lightning strike. And I know the arborist at the University of Iowa, so I'm sure I'll find out if it ever needs to come down, but right now it's considered to be sound. It would be considered a hazard tree if it wasn't safe because of all the students that would be around the area. And this one's also on the University of Iowa campus. I didn't put it with the other elms because of the location here. Made sense to put it with the walnut. And this has been a state champion and probably will be again. This one's being treated. You know, hackberries got that big. Yeah. I think this tree was actually big enough to be a national champion. However, there was a guy in Michigan called Paul Thompson, and he wasn't very accurate with his tree measurements, but he nominated a lot of trees and he had a lot of national champions, but they weren't deserving. And this one was almost as big as one of his Michigan hackberries, and I think if they'd both been measured accurately, this one probably would have come out on top. I measured a red pine in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that was a Paul Thompson tree, and it was a national champion. It was supposed to be 144 feet tall, I think. I measured it, got 116. And when I measured the spread, it was interesting because the spread that he put down for the average spread was what I found for the maximum spread. And then the trunk circumference, I was getting the same circumference that he had years earlier. You know, the trunk has grown. So he took every opportunity to add points where he could. So I don't think he's respected Michigan, but not by me. But I found this one, and it's interesting because when I first saw this tree, I didn't pay it much attention back in the mid-80s. It wasn't that big, but look at it now. It's the biggest one we know of in Iowa. How's that for a green ash? This is in Grinnell, and it's on city property. It's close to the public sidewalk. And I was told that it would be treated to protect it from emerald ash borer. And I was like, well, that's fantastic. Well, when we had the derecho come through, I had somebody call me about another tree in Grinnell. I said, would you do me a favor and check on this big green ash? And I gave him a location. And I said, I want to know if it survived the derecho, you know, if it had damage, you know, kind of assess it for me and let me know. So then I hear back from them and they said, oh, it's just fine. It wasn't damaged by the derecho. And so I'm thinking, that's incredible. And I go there. Well, no wonder it survived the derecho. It didn't have any leaves on it. The wind went right through it. It was dead. They failed to mention that. Very disappointing. Okay, there's been a lot of champion white firs, and this was among the first or second one. This is in Adel. See, it's got 2 leaders. I mentioned that with them. They're prone to having multiple leaders. That is not a good thing. I told the owner, I said, you know, someday that's going to split. And later, I found out from him that he was just kind of like, yeah, he was thinking, well, it's an old tree that's been here a long time, it's not going to split. It's split. The more dominant leader came off. Well, now, without that other leader protecting this one, that's what happened. So it's very important to keep one leader on conifers, especially firs. They are very prone to having multiple leaders. And then I found a big one in Greene County. This is Jefferson. It had a similar thing. It had 2 leaders, and one of them was broken off, but it broke off, so there was just kind of a stub there. And I thought, well, this is going to be, it was going to be prone to breaking from west winds because that other tree was on the west side. So I went up there and thinned it out a little bit so that it wouldn't catch as much wind. At least that was my thinking. And that's me up there doing some pruning. I didn't use any safety equipment back in those days, but then later I became a certified arborist and realized that I did everything wrong. Not for pruning the tree, but for safety purposes. Which I already knew that, but I was young and foolish, so I wouldn't do that now. I don't think. And this is kind of an interesting one because this one was a state champion for many years. And it was in a cemetery, a city cemetery, I thought. Turns out it's actually in a Jewish cemetery that's connected to the city cemetery. So I thought, well, I really should find out, you know, let them know that it's a champion tree and they can say, okay, and they wouldn't let me include it. So that was our biggest white fir that we knew of, but it wasn't the state champion. So. But this is Hampton. So remember, I was on my way to measure that biggest new cottonwood, and look what I found. So I think I'm standing right there. That's a white fir. I've looked for years and years thinking I'm going to find a white fir over 90 feet tall and never did. I had 2 in Newton that were close and they both came down. And this one is not in the best shape, but boy, that's impressive. That's an impressive tree. And it's just, you know, out in the open on relatively flat ground. I don't know how it turned out like that. Now we're down into southern Iowa. Now the catalpa, believe it or not, we have had 10 different catalpa champions in Iowa. So some of them have been destroyed and most of them have been surpassed by bigger ones. So that is an impressive bird. And of course, I'm referring to the tree.
Yeah.
But I called them a while back because I wanted to get a better photograph because you can't see the flare of the base because of all the stuff around it. And I was hoping maybe that it had gotten better. I found out, you know, now there's a camper or something parked next to it, so it's worse. Yeah, and but Davenport, that is the catalpa capital of Iowa. There's a number of big ones there, and this is the one that comes out biggest on points, although I'm not convinced it's the biggest one on volume. And I'm not a math person. I don't think I'm going to get into calculating volume. I also don't have the necessary equipment, but I would be curious to know on some of these trees. That would be the true way of comparing to see which is the biggest. And this amazing catalpa I found in Newton, and it was kind of in a off the beaten path part of Newton, at least as far as I was concerned, because I've been to Newton numerous times and been, in the older part of town, and I'd never seen this tree, but this was apparently one of the arteries that was old, that went out of town, so it's kind of on the edge of town. Amazing, amazing catalpa. But it was in the path of the derecho. The tree is still standing, but it took a beating, real beating. That was an impressive tree. It's just amazing. This one's in Des Moines. This is one I've been monitoring for a while. And it's not too shabby either. It's kind of hard to capture them flowering. I'm not sure why, but I spent some time trying to get good photographs. I'm not really completely satisfied with all of them. That was not too bad. I love catalpas. I think they've kind of fallen out of favor and people don't like them because they're messy, but well, I think they're really cool. Okay, now we're in White Pine Hollow. That's my go-to place. Although as I get older, the hiking up and down those hills, all day is not as easy as it used to be. But when I first found this tree in 2013, I couldn't tell if it was a rock elm or an American elm. And I thought, well, I don't want to say it's a rock elm in case it turns out to be an American elm, because the rock elm is rare, even though American elms are becoming rare too. But I just didn't want to make that mistake. So I was calling it an American elm. I thought if it would turn out to be a rock elm, that'd be great, but I don't want to say it's a rock elm and I'm not sure. And then when I went back in 2023, I was able to get a positive identification, and it is indeed a rock elm, and it may be the tallest documented rock elm in the country. Doesn't have a big girth, but boy, it's tall. Now, there is one in Minnesota that's listed at 113 feet tall, but I bet it was measured with the tangent method, and I bet it's probably not. I bet it's under 90 feet tall, if I had to guess. But I have an idea of what the surrounding area is like, and it's not down in a deep ravine like this one. Sometimes measuring trees can be tricky. I mean, it's not easy navigating around on those rocks. But maybe that's the reason it's still there. But rock elm, very cool tree. This tree is likely 300 years old. They're a slow growing species. There's Bruce Blair. Now, if you look at field guides to trees and you check the range map for a red maple, they are found in Minnesota. They're found in Wisconsin. They're found in Illinois and Missouri, but not Iowa. This is a native red maple in Iowa. So there could be some other little pockets, I don't know. And there's probably only, less than 24 trees here, but I think it's kind of exciting. And it's a tall tree too. It's the tallest red maple because it's growing in the timber. And it doesn't look like the ones that you see planted around. They have the smooth bark because that's probably considered to be more attractive. So this swamp white oak, I had heard of this tree. It's not one that I found, but it had been nominated years ago. And the address was Huxley. And I'm thinking, there can't be a huge swamp white oak at Huxley. Well, a little bit further east, along the Skunk River, sure enough, there was a huge swamp white oak. And when I first saw it, there was like a little forest growing up under the tree and around the tree, and the owner was intentionally letting those trees grow because he thought they would protect the tree. Well, there may have been a little bit of protection for the tree. However, it was shading it out. So all those lower limbs were starting to die because they got to have sunlight. So I advised him it'd be better to cut the trees down, which he did. And then, in 2020, the derecho blew it over. And I had, you see this stub right here. So I had a photograph when this tree was symmetrical. And I had a friend of mine, since I'm not a tech guy, I had him helping me save my photographs. And he lost it and couldn't retrieve it. And so he said, well, I hope that was not too far away, you know, you can go back and get another photograph. Well, when I did, a storm had come and taken this off, so this was the best I could do. And now the tree's gone all together, so. What happened? I didn't think I held it down too long.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is still valid. Now, I didn't mention that, while I'm thinking of it, American Forests are the ones that have been in charge of the National Big Tree Program since its inception in 1940. However, they are no longer. And it was kind of in limbo for a year or two, but now the University of Tennessee has taken it over. So they're going to be in charge of the National Big Tree Program. And I have already spoken with the person in charge of it, so it's kind of nice to be consulted on what I thought, you know, they should be doing. But anyway, they are working on a new website. Our website now is atrocious, one of the worst of all the states, maybe the worst, but it's going to be much improved. And that's because a friend of mine who did work at the Science Center, Mark Runkle, now works for the DNR, and you guys know this. All it takes is you got to have some person that's excited about doing something to get things done. And that's finally what we have. Because before, it was just an extra thing to do. And back in the early 90s, they decided that no money would go towards the big tree program. So the district foresters couldn't even go out of their way to check a tree root. So it's been up to me, essentially, to keep this thing going all this time. And I put a lot of work into it, but it's been worthwhile. I'm not complaining. It's been very enjoyable for the most part. And it's given me something to look forward to, you know, it's kind of a lifetime project. That might be the last slide. Well, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Do we have time for questions? Yeah.
Is there a black label?
Yes. So there's been some discussion recently about whether the black maple and the sugar maple should be considered separate or if it's the same species. I can usually tell some difference with the bark. The black maple doesn't have the shaggy flakes like the sugar maple. Generally. So, and in central Iowa, where I live, it's almost all, the older trees are almost all black maple unless they were planted. Then you get east of here and you start getting into sugar maple. And so it gets to be, you're not sure if it's a sugar or a black maple. And then they probably hybridize as well. But yeah, they're a cool tree and they're a long-lived tree. Yeah.
What would be your favorite tree for trees for beauty?
For beauty?
Yes.
I'd say American elm. Yeah, I always pick something that's gonna disappear. Elms, the blue ash, you know, just, the blue ash, I found out from Jeff Parsons, who works with the USDA, and he collects tree seeds and other plant seeds and freezes them for the future. And, he was telling me about the blue ash will germinate. And they'll sit there as a little seedling for decades until a tree falls and there's an opening and then they come up. And it's like, you know, so interesting. All these trees have got their little ways that they survive and, yeah. Not enough. That's someplace I want to go. There are some native white pines there. I'm not sure if there's any other trees there that would stand out as being special, but I'm curious to know just how big those native white pines are there. Because I want to get that, and I've got some other locations, and I'm gonna send them to a guy in Minnesota who studies white pines, if he's gonna be interested in that information. Yeah,
Similarly, I wondered if you've scouted at Lacey Kisakwa State Park.
oh,
There's tons of huge sycamores and.
yeah, some. The thing that interests me about that area is the potential for post oaks. Now, post oaks are a southern species, but they do get into southeastern Iowa. And that's a species that's just hasn't been reported enough. I know there's more of them there than what we know. So the trouble is when I'm out there, when the trees are bare, if the tree's in the distance, I'm probably gonna think it's a white oak, because the bark looks very similar. So unless I see a leaf, I'm not gonna know, but I've got some areas in Lee County picked out that I think are gonna have post oaks. I'm kind of excited to go down there and find them, but I think there's probably some post oaks in that park, because it's a big park.
Yeah, the serviceberry, when you were talking about those blooming, yeah, it's just extraordinary at Lacey. And thank you for talking about the hackberry in Perkins Park in Burlington. I used to walk my dog there all the time.
Oh,
When I
yeah.
lived there, so, and I wish I knew now what I did about that area, because that would have been fascinating to.
Burlington
It
just
gets
recently
that.
got some designation about being the tree city of the world,
Oh,
the
cool.
country or something. I mean, it was pretty special.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, it's a very big place. Yeah.
Did you ever get a call or anything on the Red Oak, right? I'm gonna call it downtown Marshalltown.
On Main Street.
It's west. Behind the residential White House.
Yes, I've measured.
Okay, fine,
Yeah,
but the derecho got that. But
yeah.
I don't know how, I don't think it was very tall, but I've been there several times and it was a big tree.
Yeah, that was a nice.
I'm gonna say, could it be,
I'm trying to. think
you
what-
correct me, you're the expert.
I'm trying to
Could it
think
be,
what the circumference was, but.
could it be 8 foot in diameter? Could it be?
More like,
8 times 3 would be 24, right?
yeah, much less than that, more like 16.
It's a big tree.
It was.
Yeah. I'm just wondering,
You know, I didn't go into this, but I had a big American elm tree in my backyard when I was a kid. And I would climb up in that tree all the time. I mean, the limbs, the bark was smooth because I was climbing on it so much. And I would go clear up into the top, and that tree was probably 75 feet tall. On a windy day, you know, you just get a ride. It's just fun. And from my yard, I could see downtown, which was 2.5 miles away, maybe more, 3 miles away. Like, when I was up in that tree, the warblers would be migrating and they paid no attention to me. I could be like 3 feet from them and they just go about their business. I mean, I was seeing chestnut-sided warblers and magnolia warblers and Blackburnian and black and whites and everything. And it was just the most special thing, you know. And nobody else climbed up in that tree, and that was fine with me. That's where I went when I wanted to be alone. Get back to nature, and that's, you know.
Mark, I read it, rock on, guys out west looking for the tallest redwood. It's a pretty good book.
Wild trees.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
In
book.
reading that, they visit with you a little bit about sleeping in a tree.
Oh.
And looking out over the coast. You ever slept in a tree like that?
I haven't even dozed off. Now, I'll tell you. We had a champion persimmon that was in Des Moines. And this is kind of a pet peeve with me because I didn't find it for years, and it was only about 2 miles from where I grew up. But it was just in a kind of an unlikely place where you wouldn't expect to find something. Well, the tree needed pruning, and the owner was mainly concerned with limbs that went over his house. And he said he was gonna pay a guy to prune those, and I'm thinking, boy, this doesn't sound good. A guy, you know, not an arborist, just a guy. And so I said, I'll tell you what, I'll prune it for less. Well, I'm a perfectionist, and when I got in that tree, I pruned everything that needed to be pruned. And this was over a span of 3 days. Now, I just was free climbing and it was a tree saw, but a hand saw, and did all this work. Well, I should backtrack a little bit because the day I was supposed to start the job, I slept on my stomach and I slept on my arm and it was asleep. And then that day it was worthless. And why I didn't postpone it, I don't know. And I'm gonna prune this tree and I only have one good arm. I could hardly get the ladder up to the trunk. And then when I was in the tree, a rainstorm came. And I didn't have time to get down, so I just waited up in the tree for the storm to pass. But then the limbs were like slippery. And so I was still trying to prune, only I was trying to also not fall off of those limbs because I was walking out on the limbs going out. But that tree got damaged in the derecho too. I could tell you, so many of our biggest, best trees got damaged. And I'm just afraid there's more derechos coming. It's just discouraging.
Here, one more question and
There's a bur oak, Iowa. Is there a champion bur oak?
Yes, the biggest bur oak is in Burlington. I don't know if it's actually in town or just out of town, but it's a magnificent tree. It's over 15-foot circumference and it's over 90 feet tall, over 100-foot spread.
And how old would you estimate it?
Oh gosh, that tree could be maybe 200 years old, could be more. Oaks, some of the white oaks can get old. I worked on a cross section of the oldest oak that's on display at the Science Center now, and it was about 440 years old. That was not an easy project. That was a lot of work.
gets you thinking about what the most ancient tree is in Iowa, what would you say?
Well, it'd probably be a white oak or a red cedar. Yeah, they're both potential, 100 years plus.
I know I've had some 400-year plus that were accidentally burned. But they're still around.
Yeah, and sometimes they have flaws in them, which is why they never got cut initially, so they're not always the most beautiful trees, but I guess that keeps you alive. Sometimes it's good to have a flaw.
Well, we're excited to get looking at our trees for the birds coming. And the Hampton Cemetery is one of our favorite places to go birding.
Oh.
It is great, especially in the winter, crossbills and pine siskins and other things and stuff, red-breasted nuthatches. And just to sit there, like you said, all the big trees around us.
There's one of the biggest blue spruces there and one of the biggest white spruces.
It's really been wonderful having you here today, so thank you. You have more questions, and don't forget, silent.